It's still spinning. Okay. Well, listen, I'm gonna record, and if it goes down, it goes down, and if it saves, it saves. So I'll be quick. The message when it's still spinning, so I don't know if I'm live or not. Oh, morning, New Me Nation. This is Justin, and I'm here with NewMinds.tv, welcoming you to episode 31 of Start Your Day. That is pretty crazy. So listen, 31 makes me think of like the start of a new month, right? So we've been at this for 30 plus days. Hey, good morning, guys. So I just want to kick off and just say a few weeks ago, I shared a piece from the book that was called The Formative Five by Thomas Hoare. Now, the idea behind this is he talks about what kind of success do kids need inside their classroom. It's interesting because I picked this book up as the crisis kicked in. And so it talks about how do you create kids that have resiliency and have grit. So yeah, there's a lot of classroom applications. Hey, good morning, Sheila. Yeah, I know. I see. She said I'm having trouble finding you. This is I'm having some internet issues this morning. So thank you for saying that. It wasn't just me then. Okay, it's good to hear. Okay, well let me know if I'm not coming through clearly. But I do want to drop this message to show resiliency for myself. So in the book, The Formative Five, Thomas Hoare talks about creating kids and students in the classroom in particular that are resilient and have this grit and can have setbacks. And really, he talks about how it requires the teacher, to create this struggle so that the kids themselves can begin to work through it. Okay, so I'm not here to give you a teacher lesson, but I am here to say I pulled this book out a few weeks ago when the crisis kicked in and the shelter in place kicked in. And it was really interesting because it's almost like we have followed this natural progression. And I'll see if I can be clear. So the first thing to do whenever you are trying to establish an environment to build resiliency is you do exactly that. You establish the environment. And so as things fell apart, the question became, man, how do we react to it? Did things fall apart? Did it just get shifted? And it became this question of like, what is our environment? And so we went through a message series talking about that's schedules. If you can give yourself mood checks and a chance to move from one thing to the other and transition, but also know what you're transitioning to so that you have a schedule in place. So that really helped all right, what is the new normal and how do we establish it? So I'm going to put a question up here. Again, having some trouble with the internet. Let me see if it goes through. And it is the question, how did you react when we first went into the whole quarantine, the whole sheltered in place piece? I want to hear what your reactions are, because really this is a chance for you to flash back, man, over a month and a half ago, flash back and be like, man, how did I originally react to this? And where am I at now? Okay, so let me keep going. So Thomas Hoare says in the Formative Five, 1, establish the environment. Okay, fine. We got schedules. And if you're like me, probably went a little too aggressive on the schedule. 9 o'clock we do this, 10 o'clock we do this. And you've probably scaled it back since then, or at least found some kind of happy medium. But that was the first part, is like, okay, we're going to have some kind of routine, some kind of normalcy that then allows us to transition from one to the other, do health checks, make sure we're there, which moves into the second part, which is really talking about like setting the expectations for what happens during those times. And this is true for kids, this is true for ourselves. It's like, okay, I now have a new workspace and I now have a new work schedule. We're juggling the baby, we're juggling the kids, we're juggling jobs. What happens during that time? And so again, if you're married, you have a significant other in the house with you, you're probably setting those expectations like, okay, this is my work time, this is your time. And that also allowed us to bring in the whole part about the Pareto Principle. And if you remember I was talking about that, it was this idea of we have these expectations that we set out for ourselves. Like, I'm going to write the great American novel, and I'm going to get all the dishes and all the laundry done. I'm going to get the house tidied up, and the kids are going to be happy and finish all their schoolwork. So that being said, where did your expectations lie? Well, that allowed us to talk about the Pareto Principle, which is the idea that what is the most important stuff? Because the most important stuff on that list, the 20%, right, of that list that we have, really that 20% impacts 80% of our life. So these small tasks that we have just listed down. And if you're like me, I'm a list maker, man. I make lists just so I can check them off. But really asking myself the question of, on that list of all the things I have there, what was significant? What were the top 20%? Because that was going to move the needle. And okay, so again, I'm going through the formative five, talking through the steps. How do you get resiliency and grit? First, establish the environment. Okay, then set some expectations. And then was the vocabulary. So we began to move into this whole part about talking about growth mindset. What do you have control over, right? And recognizing those things, like what you do and don't have control over, helps you have this piece of of this resiliency piece, because now you feel like you're not just a wash of things coming at you. And it's very true. It's very true. There's a whole lot of neuroscience done on this piece. There's a whole lot of social psychology research done in this area. In fact, I was just reading an article just the other day is talking about patients in nursing homes. If they gave them choices as far as what they could do for their daily routine and activities, how their personal area was set up, they believe that they show a correlation to the longevity of life. What? But really, boiling it down to what does it have to do with teaching the vocabulary? If you feel like you have control over something, or if you are hitting setback and you're able to say, I'm not there yet, this is putting you in control of a situation. So that allowed us to talk about, all right, I want to establish resiliency and grit and stick-to-itiveness. Yes, Shay says she loves lists as well. Mwah, me too, man. So the next part after that, once you have talked about the vocabulary, is, check this out, monitoring. And so now, if you remember, we talked about, okay, so monitoring where you're at in the midst of the struggle. Kristen talked about this. I talked about this. Ben talked about this. Probably the easiest takeaway, if you're going to slap a cliche bumper on the back of your SUV, would be name it to tame it, okay? Which is really, in the midst of all the struggle, if you're able to stop and to breathe, we talked about mindfulness, talked about breath. If you're able to stop and breathe and be able to name it to tame it, this is the idea that now you can monitor yourself, which allows you to react appropriately. And I had heard a very moving story, just was it 2 days ago, and it came from a course on mindfulness, and it was talking about how mindfulness had made it into the military. And so we've known that for a while. We know that snipers use box breathing, right? The 4, hold, down for 4, breathe out, hold, right? If you haven't done box breathing, it's a great way in order to monitor yourself. And there's a first person account of a military personnel. He was a lieutenant, and he was having a really difficult time controlling his anger. And so they had just barely begun to establish mindfulness as far as a practice. He's going to it. He thinks it's a bunch of malarkey, right? But he's doing it. He's working on it. And he tells a story like this. I'll do my best to paraphrase. He goes to the grocery store. And I should be fair, I grew up on a military base, so they're not called the grocery stores. But for the sake of this story. Okay, so he goes to a grocery store, and he's standing in line at the checkout, and he's got his cart of groceries. Now in front of him is this lady who's holding a baby, right? An older lady holding a baby. She's only got one item. And his first reaction is like, my God, didn't she know that there's like a express lane over there? Why is she in front of this line? Why is she slowing down my line? And so he begins to move forward in the line. He's watching her. Now he doesn't react because, again, I mean, he's very militaristic, and she should be going to this line over here and not in control, right? Control. So for him to be able to breathe and take a step back and monitor, he doesn't react. The lady gets to the front of the line, and actually he notices that the cashier is like cooing with the baby and like, oh, so cute. The older lady hands the baby over, and the cashier holds the baby just for a second, and he's freaking out at this. He's like, are you kidding me? I'm trying to check out my groceries. This is not appropriate. Madam, take your baby back so I can, but he doesn't. He monitors himself, and he monitors his awareness. And then as he gets up to the cashier, he has control. But the only thing he can muster out to say is, cute baby, huh? Right? Okay, I mean, I can hear that. Cute baby. And she goes, you think so? Thank you. That's my kid. My husband passed away. And so my mom comes by with the baby once a day at the same time so that I can hold them just for a little bit while I work a double shift. Stories like that take you in like your heart and just squeeze it. But I share that because that's the part about monitoring. So stepping back, I know that you have established your environment and your routines, and you probably went to one extreme, and now it's gone to the other extreme, and maybe you found some normality in the middle there. Because as you established expectations, like what happens during these times, who's in charge of the kid, who gets the office at what time, whatever your story is, I hope that you've begun to establish not only the environment, but also set those expectations. And then you're practicing that vocabulary piece. The biggest part there is monitoring. So how are you feeling? Where are you at? Doing those self-checks. I even shared another one too, but I'll bring it up again because, again, we're on 31 episodes. I would be remiss to think you've watched all of them. And it's called the Mood Meter. And so it's an app. I do believe it costs like 99 cents. Totes worth it. So I'm trying to show you the picture here. So it's called Mood Meter. And I truly believe in it. Like I said, I don't know how much you guys know about cognitive behavioral therapy, but a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy stems from collecting data. And so it has to be in partnership with the therapist and also in partnership with the participant. And so they want to know how you're feeling. And so with this right here, let me see if you can see. You've got two different X and Y quadrants. Well, I'm sorry, there's 4 quadrants, but there's an X and Y axis. And so how much is your energy? Like, for example, right now, doing great. I'm up here, right? It is Monday morning, so I'm not like through the roof. I'm not jacked up on coffee. And then how is your mood? And so this is the actual, I'm feeling very angry, all the way to I'm feeling very happy. Energy, and then general mood. So again, man, feeling good. I'm going to click here, and it says I'm feeling enthusiastic and lively. Then that's one thing. It's really cool to be able to have something that represents this. And I even shared this for using with students or kids. My youngest, Katie, I use this with her. It's a chance for her to do like a pulse check and see where she's at. And she just needs it. She just needs that self-monitoring piece. But the reason I like it too is because next you can make a few notes. And then, of course, to have data, it saves it. It's really interesting. Like a lot of times we think that our moods are just like, I don't know, flighty. Like it's like the weather, like we have no control over them. What's really interesting is after a little bit of monitoring, a little bit of data collection, you actually begin to find that there are cycles and there are reasons and implications. Like, oh my gosh, I see that my mood is low, but the note that I put in there was I didn't get very good sleep the night before. Now that's an easy connection to make. Try looking at it from a global perspective. Having done this for over a year, it's interesting. Like it's actually mind-numbing to see that certain times of the year you have different moods that begin to show up. Okay, so I won't go too far. Let me see if I can bring it back to the point. Talking about the book, The Formative Five. And again, this is written for teachers talking about their classroom, but really the lessons have wider reaching implications, which is how do you achieve grit and resiliency? And so the very last part that I put here was a poll. Oh, cool. I'm so glad to see some answers coming back in. This is awesome. So you establish the environment. We talked about that. You set your expectations. Talked about that. You're using the vocabulary. I haven't got this yet, right? I have control over this. I don't have control over this. I need to let that go. Then you're monitoring. And then the very last one, okay, again, so you've been monitoring for a while. You know where you're at. You're able to do your box breathing. And then the very last one they have is stopping to reflect and learn, which is why I started with this poll. How did you react when we first went into the shelter in place? Okay, again, where are you now? Take a second to reflect on that. Where were you when this first started? Honestly. And I gave 3 options, so you can have 1,000 more answers, I know. I'm freaking out. Breathe, just breathe. Okay, listen, I got this. Somewhere in that spectrum. So where did you land when this first happened? And then where are you now? Because, man, life is so busy. We tend to forget that we've actually grown. And we tend to forget that we've actually come a long way because Well, I'll give you one small example to kind of bring it out. Every time that my mom sees our kids, now my mom lives far apart from me, but when we get together, which is once a year, right, for the holidays and whatnot, when we do get together, she has a chance to see our own kids. And you know where I'm going with this. It's always like, oh my gosh, they've grown. Well, the perspective from us as the parents are no, what? They're the exact same. We see them every day, so we don't get a chance to witness these growths in large chunks. So this is my opportunity to tell you and ask you to please take a second to reflect and see what you've learned from it. So now you've got to take a meta step back and say, where did I start this and where did I end? Let me see what the comments say. Sheila says she was scared but excited at the possibilities. Man, it's incredible. And Sheila, how far have you come since then, right? All right. Are you in control, right? What do you have control over? Have you figured those things out? Have you adjusted those? Okay, so there's my challenge. It was a small challenge. Sheila also says that she likes challenges, clapping and rubbing hands together. So my challenge is this. For you personally, can you take a step back, like a meta step back, and see, okay, where did I start and where am I at now, to see what you've learned? And then with others in your life, do the same thing. Because again, we're all on this wave together. We're all going up and down, and maybe we're all undulating at different wavelengths and different frequencies. But as you encounter people today, ask them, just simply ask them, man, hey, how did you react when this first went down? Hey, where are you at now? And I know it sounds like you're being cheesy. It's a super easy question to ask. It's also a neat way to reflect and say, you know what? I have grown. So, okay, well, all right. Let me get to the quick schedule for the day. So, man, this will be the last week of April to broadcast. It's exciting. And then we'll be hitting May, which begins to hint our camp season. So this is the schedule for today, and we're making some minor adjustments in the weeks to come. But we'll continue to be putting out content for you and engaging. And man, so happy you guys have tuned in this morning. So yeah, it's we have start the day at 9, and then of course 10 o'clock we have the Parent Power Hour with Kristen, and then we have Mr. Dorian 11 with the STEAM train for kindergarten through second. At 12 o'clock we have the STEM en Espanol with Miss Catalina, and then we have Mr. Adam with Into the Dungeon Verse. 2 o'clock we have Around the World with Mr. Walter. 3 o'clock Mr. Dorian's back with the STEAM train for 3 through 5. And then we have From the New Minds Vault, and that's mine today. So I'll get the kiddos back in there again. I had fun last time playing around with some resonant frequencies. I gave them a break after the cardboard challenge, but nope, today they're back hosting with me, so it'll be fun. And then 5 o'clock, Mr. Ben comes back on to round up the day. So just a reminder, we're broadcasting on Facebook. It's here for us, but at the same time, we also know that YouTube is more accessible, so all videos are put onto YouTube, also in playlists. So if you want to share a playlist, that's probably the best way to get that content out there. So if you're like, man, I think someone would benefit from the Parent Power Hour. I think someone would benefit from the K2 Steam Train with Mr. Dorian. You can share that playlist directly off of YouTube. And at the same time, we keep filtering them all onto our website, which is newminds.tv. Man, so again, it's been a pleasure and an opportunity to come out here. It's been a pleasure to have this opportunity to come out here and share with you just this idea that you have grown, my friends. You are growing, resilient, and more resilient every single day. We all are. And yes, we still have struggles and we still have ups and downs. But if you ever feel like you're in that down spot, that's okay. Embrace it. And then ask yourself, how much have I grown? So, all right. Have an amazing, amazing day. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow.